Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, joined today by Tony Haggerty and Laura Bradburn. Later on, we'll be getting live reactions from Easter Road from Natasha Meikle. This is A Celtic State of Mind. This is the end of a forgettable season and a forgettable game. Laura, before we get into the action, just to clarify the many hundreds of messages that are appearing on social media, we did not get granted access to Easter Road by Celtic. Doesn't work like that. Celtic had nothing to do with it. So I know that was raising a few complaints. Celtic were being tagged in, as were the SLO. Nothing to do with Celtic that we were in Easter Road today. So just to clarify that. And we were in there in a professional capacity in relation to A State of Mind being a media company. So it wasn't a fan in the ground, although she is a fan of Celtic. And we will be hearing from Natasha Meikle later on. Anthony, what was your thoughts? I mean, that really just kind of summed up the whole season, that 90 minutes, did it not?
Bouffing was my initial expression. Good old Scottish word, bouffing. No, I mean, no imagination, no flair, no spark, no heart, no passion. You know, you saw the team and you could have put money on that result. I wish I had. Hibs were only bothering about the Scottish Cup. No, sorry, we aren't bothering about it again because they've got the Scottish Cup next week, so... I mean, absolute dross. Waits till 9 minutes to go to throw on Griffiths and Bell. I mean, come on. I know. You know, my old work colleague, Ewan Graham, great man, his part was brilliant. He used to, these kind of games, and I'd say to him, what's your thoughts? And he had a great expression. Hurry on death was his expression. That was a hurry on death kind of game, I think you would find. Yeah, I mean, these were journalists' nightmare trying to, you know...
I bet.
1,000 words on something like that.
Trying to claw something out of you. And they do say that sleep is the cousin of death, and that would have sent you to sleep, Laura. 90 minutes, not a great deal happening. Yeah, we spoke about the free kick in the first half. Pretty baffled by the decision, to be fair. Second half, you're kind of crying on for a wee bit of a fresh approach. Kennedy played it safe. Does it concern you that he was talking during the week about putting in some plans for next season?
Well, before I go into that, if sleep is the cousin of death, then a coma must be the brother of death, and I think that was a bit closer to what we were experiencing today. It certainly does concern me that John Kennedy's talking in those terms, because there are a couple of things that suggest the worst nightmare in my view being that he takes the manager's role on in some official capacity, because as we were discussing previously, for anybody who thinks that the club have remained quiet on the appointment of a manager because they are working on it in the background and think that it might be closing in the offing, the communications from the club this week suggest to me that we are further from that than I thought we were. So the prospect of John Kennedy being manager officially in some capacity next season is more of a reality than it was to me a week ago. The other problem it is as well is he's had 10 games now to put in place the plans he would have put in place before next season. He's had a chance at what we've all called an audition or a prolonged interview or whatever you want to call it, and we have seen nothing to suggest that he's got anything in his locker that is going to improve this team. You can't consistently blame the players all the time for the performances they put in, and they have been shocking. But
on the subject of Kennedy, Laura, you know, we asked the question last week, has anything changed? Do you see anything really changing in the performances since he took over? I think our record's worse, actually, since he came in.
Yeah, well, no, that was the point I was going to get on to, is, you know, if getting rid of Neil Lennon was going to help the issue, then we've not seen that. We've not seen a vast improvement. We've seen the 6-0 win against Livingston and the 4-0 win last week or this week against St Johnstone. But those have been the exceptions. They've been in spite of what he's putting in place rather than because of it, I think. And if he's going to be there in any sort of capacity next season with any significant impact on the way the players are playing on the pitch, then I'm more worried than I was this time last week, like I said.
Thanks to Helen McCallum. ACSOM have been brilliant this season. Thank you. And thank you for the kind words. We do get a lot of kind words, Anthony, as well as the flack that has ensued because we had the audacity to actually manage to get into the ground, all legally, by the way. We got in legally. It wasn't a Mission Impossible style dive in from the top of the stand, Laura, before you start that. Carry on. And John, I'm going to throw this one to you, Tony. John Aaron says, rip-roaring, free-scoring Glasgow Celtic, where are they?
Indeed, John. Where are they? I'd prefer Ludovic Kennedy in charge of Celtic at this minute. Go and Google him and you'll see what I mean. Honest to God. You had your chance to put your stamp or your mark on, being given that role as a manager and, just reverted to... Nothing changed, did it? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And then, which coined the phrase Lenedy. That's what you'll be remembered for in that 10-game stint in charge. Nothing changed. We got Karamoko for a wee cameo the other night, got him today for 10 minutes. Karamoko and Dembele should have been playing all of those 10 games, every one of them, just to see what we've got. Montgomery as well should have been introduced. Griffiths maybe to try and get himself picked for the Euros or in the squad for the Euros. That kind of thing. But the season was gone when he took over, so why not? But today it was just apathy amongst the players, wasn't it? It seemed like an apathetic performance.
An apathetic performance, absolutely.
Or just a pathetic one.
Yeah, you can split that. Yeah, you can split that. Apathetic and apathetic performance, basically. Yeah. Nothing.
No, the only thing I'm kind of trying to glean from that performance is that's Barkasi's second clean sheet in a row, Tony. Have we got a goalkeeper on our hands? I'm not too sure about that. So, yeah, John Kennedy's come in, and I think that, he's only 37, isn't he? And if he's got aspirations, which I think he must have, to go out on his own and get a job as a manager at some stage, then this was an opportunity to actually, show the football and landscape what it is you do as a manager, what is your style. And in order to do that, you need to have taken a few risks. I think that he hasn't done that. He hasn't taken any risks, really, when you look at the team selection, even for today's game. But a few of the players we really need to talk about, because it could have been the final appearance of the likes of Edouard, Lee Griffiths, Ryan Christie and various others, possibly Ayer as well. But let's start off with Scott Brown. So this is the last time we will see Scott Brown in a Celtic jersey. Lots has been said, Laura, over the last few weeks since the announcement was made that he's going to Aberdeen. Sum up your thoughts about Brown. I've seen a great video, Celtic Analytics on Twitter, put together some tremendous kind of defensive midfield play by Scott Brown. And I remembered back to a couple of weeks back when I stood in for Kevin Graham on Scream of Celica. We were covering Celtic 7, Motherwell 1 from 1999. And Henrik Larsson scored 4 goals that day. And the one goal that stood out for me was it started off probably a third of the way from his own goal by Paul Lambert. And he broke down play, swiftly turned, made his move, found Tosh McKinley on the left, who crossed over first time for Henrik Larsson. And watching that goal back all these years later, I was thinking, when was the last time we seen Bruni doing that? Bruni used to do that, break up play, turn it into attack. And there's a great clip on Twitter, as I say, check it out, where it shows many of these games are in Europe, by the way, where he was breaking up the game and he was winning possession back for Celtic. And I watched that game today with interest, not to slag off Scott Brown, because I've said before and I'll say it again, he's a Celtic legend, absolutely a Celtic legend. But that part of his game that made him the player he was has been missing for some time, I feel, Laura. And it was on display again today. Well,
yeah, what I'll say to begin is, bringing up Paul Lambert as a comparison for me is a difficult one to sort of comment on, because you want to be positive about Scott Brown given that he's about to leave us and that kind of thing. But for me, as somebody who was too young to see Paul McStay in his prime, Paul Lambert is the single best midfielder I've seen in a Celtic shirt, without any shadow of a doubt. His defensive play, his passing, his shooting, everything about him was just a cut above the rest. And for me, Scott Brown has never been quite on that level as a player. But like you say, I think he did have, certainly in his younger career, and even as late as the Brendan Rodgers years was a lot more of a dynamic player than he's shown this season. I think if this season has taught us anything, that, you know, Tony and Jim, when I'm on with them on a Friday, have put across very concise and cogent arguments about him potentially having an effect off the pitch going into the following seasons. And I have to say my mind was changed on that when I saw how he engaged with the fans and the fan conference. But yeah, on the pitch, you know, I don't think we'll be missing much next season. I think his time has caught up with him, unfortunately, and it really is starting to show, especially when you do compare it to years gone by.
Now, see, when you are looking at that game as Bruni's last appearance in a Celtic jersey, Tony, we already know it's the end of an era for obvious reasons. We've spoken about the need at Celtic to have some form of constant, you know, where they're passing on that baton. We spoke about Tommy Burns the other day. I'm looking around that park, I'm looking for leaders, and they're in short supply. Anthony Haggerty, we're going to rue the day that we allowed this deal to happen.
They might well rue the day that they let Scott Brown go out the door, but I'm not remembering the Scott Brown that trudged off the park in a 0-0 against Hibs today. I'm remembering the Bruni. I'm remembering the goal at Kilmarnock, goal against the Israeli side, Hapoel Beersheva, that kind of the goal against Hamilton that dug you out a hole. You know, I'm remembering all the good things about Bruni. And the fact that I said it the other day, captain, leader, legend, I think that neatly sums him up and sums up his Celtic career. This has just been the season from hell, and Scott Brown's been caught up in that vortex with leaving the club as well. And it's not the way he wanted to leave, but I don't remember. I'm not going to remember that Bruni, the one that didn't get the chance to say cheerio to the fans. Hopefully he does get that at a later stage. I remember all the good things that Scott Brown brought to the club. That, you know, that energy, that thrusting dynamic force that they bought for 4.4 million from Hibs when everybody thought he was a shoe-in to sign for Rangers, and he came to Celtic because of Gordon Strachan and Tommy Burns' role in it, and he became the most probably one of the most hated players in the country for making that decision, and became public enemy number one and a target for every midfielder that fancied their Barra, as they say in Glasgow, against him. And he saw off every challenge, and he's walked off with a hat full of medals and given us lots of magical memories. And yeah, and is rightly lauded as a captain alongside the likes of McNeil. And people can argue the toss over his footballing ability. That's a debate that will rage on for years and years and years. But I say it again, he competed against the best, hit his wits against the best, and enjoyed it and loved it. And the fans loved him, and he loved the supporters. And is there still room for Scott Brown at Celtic? You bet the life there is. But he's left to pursue another option, probably play a bit more for Aberdeen this season than he would have at Celtic. But just that driving force, that go-to man, the guy that could explain Celtic to any newcomers. And when a new management comes in, a possible captain coming in from the cold, because we don't have leaders like that. There's no natural successor. So the next guy coming in might be a captain that's bought from elsewhere. And Scott Brown could have just said to him, look, you'll never experience anything like this in your life. This is the club. It's a great club. And if you take it and embrace it and you get it and take it to your heart, you'll get it returned 100-fold. And yeah, I mean, that's not. I don't count that as Scott Brown's last game for Celtic. I just don't. I'm trying not to think of this season as his last season for Celtic. It's very difficult not to, but you know, I think the Celtic supporters' memories will be kinder to him. We'll kind of airbrush this one, and we'll just remember the good things.
When you look at someone we've already mentioned, Laura, and Paul Lambert, and you look at how he captained the club, and similarly with Tommy Boyd as well, you know, there was a period of time where they maybe weren't playing week in, week out, but they were still there, and their influence was being felt by their teammates, even though they weren't on the park every week. Scott Brown has been pivotal this season to virtually every Celtic performance. 42 games he's played this season. So it's not as though he's going out having only played 15, 20 games. You're looking at the situation thinking that that would have been, because of the period of transition we're just about to enter, Laura, it would have been good business. I've said this before, to keep him. Just to keep him now. I'm not expecting him to be our number 8, or he looks more like a number 6 these days. He was a number 8 previously, Tony. But, playing week in, week out. But for that influence and for that transition period, when you consider the amount of players who may be leaving, and I don't feel there is a natural successor in terms of the captaincy, would it not have made more sense? Or does this come right down again to that, the boardroom that we've been criticising earlier on in the show by saying that they just don't get that side of things? They're just looking at the fact that he's probably the best paid player at the club, and they're thinking we'll free up those wages for a 36-year-old so that we can reinvest it. Do you think it's an oversight, one that we might even regret?
Listen, I think it's mismanagement of the squad in general has done a disservice to a lot of the players this season, and Scott Brown has suffered that more than most. There's no way in which somebody who's in the heart of the midfield the way he is should be playing 46 games or 42 games, whatever it was, at 36 years of age. It's like... what it has done is, like back when Paul McStay was in the team, Tom Boyd, that kind of thing, there was an element of respect afforded to them that they were still recognised as the captain, but that didn't necessarily mean that their on-the-pitch contributions matched up to that. But they never lost that level of respect. I think his level of respect has been degraded by the way in which he's been managed in the squad this season. There's been far too much expected of him on the pitch, and it reflects a wider disconnect, like we've all talked about, of how the club manage these situations, don't recognise the lasting impact and effect of players and staff on the club, and how that can be managed going forward. I was having a discussion with my mum on FaceTime last night, and we were talking about, she mentioned to me that her and my brother and sister, I was too young at the time, but they went to a thing in the King's Theatre called Peter's Party back in 1997, I think it was. And Tommy Burns stood up that night and sang a Whitney Houston song, the name of which escapes me, but he when the line went up, they can take everything away from me, but they can't take away my dignity. And the Celtic crowd that was in the crowd that night absolutely roared. And there was a connection there between one person and the group of fans. That could have been a connection that remained with Scott Brown, because, and people will call me a hypocrite for saying this because I have been very critical of him, but that connection could have remained there. And like you say, events like that you're now talking about 25, 30 years ago, those type of things wouldn't happen nowadays, because there isn't that connection between the fans and the club, and it's sad to see.
It still does remain, Laura. You name any Celtic supporter that doesn't have Scott Brown in their heart. I don't think there's any. And I think, again, down to poor management at the top, they've let this guy go out the door. Why would you not make him an offer he can't understand, never mind refuse? You know what I mean? So just say, look, your game time might be limited. I know you want to play, but we see you as a coach of the future, and sell him like that and say, but we need you here. There's a transition here. You need to be part of that. Mm-hmm. This role off the field is going to be just as important as anything that happens on the field under a new regime. We need you here. Can you do that for us?
Do you think the transition is Sorrow? And if so, Tony, what you're saying there makes perfect sense to me. Do you think the transition is that Sorrow comes into the side? And how would he benefit from Bruni on the training ground every single day for another season?
How he benefited from Bruni if he does come in and becomes a regular first team player. You'll find that out, and he won't be shy in saying it. And when you talk about Lambert, when Paul Lambert came to Celtic, a Champions League winner, he was there, and he stayed there. Instant respect, and I think, and I say you can argue the toss about someone's ability, but Scott Brown has gained respect of everybody. Grudging might be from some, but he's gained the respect of the whole of Scotland.
Is that aimed at me, Tony?
I wish he thought of it, you actually. But you know what I mean. So you cannot question his role at the club. It's been pivotal, and I've said it. This will be the third time I say it. He's been the beating heart of that club for the best part of a decade, and the beating heart of Scottish football for the best part of a decade. Because many have came and he's seen them all off.
He has. And, you know, today, and it's not deliberate, but Tommy Burns has crept into conversations quite a few times today and yesterday as well. And I did have the absolute pleasure I had the pleasure to speak to 3 of Tommy's kids the other night there in relation to a Tommy Burns play that is, the tickets are on sale now. The video's on our YouTube. You can find them on Twitter as well. We are going to be, the play is going to be raising cash for the foundation. And they were telling some brilliant stories the other night. So if you missed that, tune into it on YouTube. But one came to my mind there when we were talking about players like Paul Lambert, who actually was originally identified as part of Tommy Burns' scouting system, where I think Andy Ritchie was part of that, as was Davy Hay, and they were scouting Europe for the best players in Europe. And we brought in players like Van Hooijdonk, Andy Tom, Paolo Di Canio, Pierre Van Hooijdonk. I've already said him. Possibly Josh Cadet, that was the other one. Aye, the 3 amigos plus Tom. And then obviously there was the situation where David Ginola, or David Ginola, was at Celtic Park for signing talks, and they were talking about that. Emma actually spoke about the fact that Tommy Burns could never ever get over the comments made by Fergus McCann that night, where he brings up training at Barrowfield. Now, I had heard this story before, where Fergus had said something along the lines of, but can you turn it on at Brockville on a wet Tuesday night? I'd heard that story, but apparently this was the deal killer, never mind the deal breaker. This was the deal killer, where he mentions Barrowfield, and Tommy was like, I wish he had never mentioned it, because Ginola then wanted to see the training pitches, right, after Fergus had mentioned them. So he comes into the meeting late, mentions Barrowfield, so they have to take him up to Barrowfield. And apparently the look on his face, Tony, when he seen the pitches up at Barrowfield, meant there was no way he was going to be coming to Celtic at that point.
I used to say Lennoxtown should have been built 1968. That's when Lennoxtown should have been built, and a facility like that. You know, Celtic won the European Cup in quantum leap backwards. All the teams that won the European Cup ended up building like great training facilities and all that on the back of it. You know, Celtic should have done that back then. And, you know, and that's the thing. And I can imagine that was the deal killer for many a footballer that came for potential signing talks for Celtic. You train here. It was a glorified public park.
Well, the thing with that, the story in the early 80s when Cruyff comes back to play for Ajax, and he simply cannot believe that Celtic trained at Barrowfield.
Yeah, that's right. And there's been, in many comments, Cruyff being one of them. Mm-hmm. He was like, he looking at Barrowfield and saying, right, okay, you might kick a ball, but where's your training ground?
Where are we really training?
Yeah, where are we really training? Yeah. So
the other problem you have, Tony, is, you know, Lennoxtown has been lauded by the club on various occasions as being this state-of-the-art sort of area and training facility. And I'm sure it has a lot better facilities than a lot of clubs. But for the type of club that we're aspiring to be, I think it's already starting to show its age. And we're in a situation now where, okay, it's nowhere near what Barrowfield was, but there are players going to be coming and seeing our facilities and the way that we work at the moment. And from my understanding of it, and go and look at other clubs, even smaller clubs down in England who have much better facilities. Look at what Leicester are doing now. And I know Leicester have won the league and that, but, you know, in terms of fan base and in terms of club size and stuff like that, we should be able to compete with them on a certain level of attracting players anyway, even if we can't financially. So, you know, you always have to be thinking about these things, trying to move ahead, trying to modernise, and trying to make sure that isn't a reason to stop a player coming to the club.
It's called evolving like a big club. You know, Celtic should have evolved in the late 60s and built a training ground, and then, as you say, kept modernising it and, you know, upkeeping it and upgrading it, whatever. You know, think like a big club. You know, there's no reason why Celtic shouldn't be able to compete with bigger clubs for players if everything's right and It's my argument all the time about Celtic. You know,
The problem there, I think, Tony, was, I mean, the only reason we used Barrowfield was, and anyone is welcome to correct me if I'm wrong, 1966, Jock's team pushed for that to become a training facility for Celtic. So up until then, a lot of the training was at Celtic Park and various other places. But then, even if you were to look at the stadium developments during the golden age of Celtic getting to quarterfinals and semi-finals and finals of European competition, very little work was done on the stadium. Now, I know that in the early 70s, the main stand was redeveloped, and then in 1987, the fascia was added. But other than the general kind of upkeep, that stadium was decrepit by the time that Fergus McCann had to come in. It wasn't fit for purpose.
The Jock's team was always pushing for a training facility. You saw the benefit of it back then in some kind of state-of-the-art facility, yet they never pulled any money into anything, you know, like ground upkeep or anything like that. You know?
Isn't it incredible that in the 1960s he's crying out for a training facility? In 1968 he's asking for a Celtic coach team to go into the league, and all these years later we're still talking about it. But one thing that was brought up at the fans forum that I was in, although I wasn't involved in it, I was watching it, was that there was something around a lasting memorial actually to Tommy Burns. They were talking about a statue at the stadium, and I just felt it was far more kind of appropriate to, and it's been mentioned a few times on here, to name Lennoxtown after Tommy Burns, name it the Tommy Burns Academy. Surely that would be far more appropriate. What do you reckon, Laura?
Listen, the whole statue thing is a bit of a strange one for me, because I think that while it's a great idea and can be a lasting legacy for a certain type of player, I think there's so much more that goes with naming something like a facility after somebody. You're talking about, you know, the future of the club. If Lennoxtown is going to be where we identify and train our players and bring on the future of the club, what better way to honour the man who had the club in his heart and his soul and his blood than to say the only way you have a future at Celtic Football Club is to train at the Tommy Burns Centre for Excellence or something of that ilk. Give the man the respect he deserves, put his name on that training facility, give it the standard of training facility that it requires, and you will get it back tenfold in the years to come.
Absolutely. You know, when you're looking at the fact that a lot of Celtic fans don't like the stadium being called Parkhead, Celtic Park, and I've actually been speaking to ex-Celts, and if you call it Parkhead, they'll correct you. And a lot of the ex-players actually just call it the Park. But I think there's
teams in Scotland, I think, it was Celtic Park in the original St Mirren Park. That wasn't Love Street, it was St Mirren Park. And supporters of St Mirren would correct you on that. Diehards. Now, that was the two grounds, to my knowledge, that were called after the club, Celtic Park and St Mirren Park. Right. Somebody will correct me again, but it's always been Celtic Park. Parkhead was kind of the area, wasn't it?
But I mean, a lot of people have called it that, Tony. Some even call it Parkers. Nobody at ACSOM.
Don't never say those words. That word again. P that rings with Arkers. I'm not having it, right?
No, I know.
Park or at a push Parkhead. It's always paradise if you're being.
Yeah. Really. But then there's this, I mean, Lennoxtown's been there. We call it Lennoxtown because of the area that's in, very similarly, as I was saying there, to the stadium being called Parkhead. Isn't it time we gave it a name so that there is that identity, and there's a bit of gravitas to joining the Tommy Burns Centre of Excellence, isn't there? Like Laura says.
It's a no-brainer for it to be called Tommy Burns. I echo exactly what Laura said there. It's a man that ate, slept and breathed Celtic. You know what I mean? And you show anybody any potential signing any video of Tommy Burns talking about Celtic, they'll be like, where's the pen? Can I sign for 10 years? They'll want a Jim McLean type contract. You know, so it's an absolute no-brainer to name that facility after Tommy Burns. You know, and there's, do you know what, in the last few, see that picture of Tommy Burns doing the flying leap onto when they qualify for the Champions League?
Yep.
I would adorn that Lennoxtown, I would have guys paint murals of that and put it all over the Tommy Burns Centre for Excellence or Tommy Burns Academy, because it's a brilliant picture. This is a guy who had been the manager, remember, and was now a coach, but he's influenced it, and he's as happy as anybody that was playing that night. Happy as Gordon Strachan. You would say an old man, but diving into a pylon, because it was a team and he'd qualify. And that mid-air shot just encapsulates everything about Tommy Burns, how happy he is. And as he's flying through the air, it's like, yes, my team's qualified for the Champions League group stages. I loved that.
Do you know what it does as well, Tony? We've all talked about how losing Scott Brown means you're losing somebody who is able to explain to players what the club means. Yeah. If you have a Tommy Burns Centre for Excellence that is adorned with his picture, that has his name on the building, the first thing people are going to do is say, "Who's Tommy Burns?" And what better way to explain Celtic than to explain Tommy Burns?
You're absolutely right. We do have a fourth guest coming in, Tony, fresh from Easter Road, which has ruffled quite a few feathers online. Celtic have been getting stick for it. Natasha's been getting stick for it. So let's bring Natasha into the conversation. Welcome back, Natasha. Talk to us about your return to a football stadium for the first time since March last year.
Oh, it was just absolutely brilliant. We are all football fans here. We know how much being in a stadium means to us, and just that feeling of walking out into a ground and seeing a pitch and the stands all be them empty, but the players on the pitch, it's an amazing feeling. We all know how it feels, and we all know how much we've missed it. It was absolutely amazing opportunity for ACSOM or for State of Mind to have the accreditation to have someone go along to the ground to represent and report back as media, and that's certainly what it was. It was reporting back as media. And I know there's a few people online who think that we don't deserve to get into the ground any more than other fans deserve to get into the ground. And all I can say on that is, yes, I'd love for every Celtic fan to be in the ground. I'd love for there to be 60,000 at Celtic Park. I'd love us to have a full allocation away from home. The unfortunate thing is at the moment is that we can't do that. And here at ACSOM, we don't think we have, any more right to be at a Celtic game more than any other fan. We all deserve to be there. But it just so happens that ACSOM got this opportunity, and we're not going to turn it down. We weren't there as a fan. We weren't there as fan support. We were there as media. And it was a great opportunity and great to be back.
No, you're spot on. It was basically just to try and clarify that Celtic did not invite a Celtic State of Mind to Easter Road today. We have a media company that overarches ACSOM, which was invited and given press accreditation by Hibs. In terms of travel and everything else, Natasha, you obviously went to the game and you were there in a press capacity rather than a fan capacity. It just so happens that you support Celtic and you reported back on ACSOM. So trying to clear that up on Twitter can be quite difficult at times, Natasha, because it's not always easy to have a conversation. But it is as simple as that. And as you say, given the opportunity, are we really going to say, you know what? No, it's okay, we'll just leave it. So it added a bit of, a different view on proceedings. We watched the game, as we always do, on a stream online, virtually. You were there and you could hear it and you could feel it. And what you've seen today was potentially the end of a few Celtic careers, but definitely the end of Scott Brown's career, potentially the end of John Kennedy's managerial career, but also the end of Peter Lawwell's time at Celtic. We believe. And he's the one figure we haven't spoken about, Natasha, since we started the broadcast this afternoon. So Peter Lawwell has left the building, apparently, although he'll still be working behind the scenes until the 1st of July, I think it is. And we're talking about ends of eras. Do you honestly think, Natasha, it is the end for Peter Lawwell?
I think so, but I wouldn't want to say I'm 100% sure of that. We've all heard the rumours of him lingering around in some sort of capacity. I don't think that'll happen. I think he'll recognise himself that it needs to be a clean break and that him staying on isn't going to benefit the club, and it's not going to benefit the club in engaging again with the fans. I think he needs to recognise that it needs to be a full step back. If he stays on in some capacity everyone in the building already knows him as the boss. He's in charge. He makes the decisions. Probably too many decisions, but he's the one in charge of making the decisions. If he's still there, even with Dominic Mackay as CEO, people are going to find it hard to shift the perception of the fact that Lawwell is in charge. So unless he takes a proper step back and leaves the club, he'll still have this control over it. I don't mind him being at the end of a phone. I don't mind him answering ad hoc queries or helping the club when he can. But I think it needs to be not in a formal employed role by Celtic anymore.
Tony, what's your thoughts on that? Because we've just been speaking about the benefits of keeping Bruni around. We know it's not happening. But I agree with Natasha, with someone who's such an imposing figure with so much authority at a club, it would be difficult to keep them around in any other capacity.
Well, we spoke about this a few weeks ago when it was made clear that he was stepping down, but we always said that he knows influential people, and if a British Super League is to happen, or some European league, you want representation there. Who knows them better? Peter Lawwell's a guy that knows these. So if you say to Peter Lawwell, this is your remit now, if he is sticking around, then that's exactly what he'll be doing, making sure that nothing bypasses Celtic if football in the future is taking, other steps, i.e. a British Super League or a European breakaway league. So who's been dealing with these characters over the past few years? Peter Lawwell. But as long as he sticks to that remit and say, right, look, we trust you, you know these people, make sure if that's the way football's going, that Celtic are at that top table. But to sit there and just watch Dominic Mackay like a praying mantis, that won't suit anybody. I don't think Dominic Mackay will be able to do his job if Peter Law was just standing looking around in the shadows. Why would you accept that?
No, you couldn't. You just couldn't.
You couldn't. So it's either a clean break or you say to Peter Law, this is your remit now. If Celtic are to become any kind of force in a British Super League or a European Super League, for want of a better term, then that's your remit. You sit on those discussions with all those people, influential people, and make sure that nothing bypasses us moving forward. That's the role I see Peter Lawwell in moving forward, if he has to stay.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things that may happen is the incoming CEO may provide a sponsorship deal for the naming rights to the stadium. Eric will continue to call it Park Heat, and AJK actually reckons it will always be Parker. Sorry, Tony. We are coming to the end, so I thought I'd throw that bombshell in there. We are coming to the end of another Celtic State of Mind bulletin, the final match day bulletin of the season. We've been here since match day 1, and we are still here. And it took us to the last game to actually get into a stadium. Thank you very much, Natasha Meikle. You'll be able to warm up now that you're back home. I'm pretty sure it was getting a bit chilly sitting there. But yes, we were simply doing it to try and improve the content that we're putting out. No more, no less. We don't feel entitled or spoiled or any of these things that's been levied on social media. So thanks everybody for getting involved today on YouTube, Facebook and on Twitter. And thank you to Laura, Natasha and also to Anthony for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.